We started putting the interior of our 65 Chevelle back together, and we found an original center console from a 65 bucket seat car, which was in pretty good shape because you can't get a new one of those, so if you find one, hold on to it. But the shifter was brand new. OPGI does a reproduction shifter, and it's pretty cool because the shift gate is adjustable. You can take the teeth out and change them based on what kind of transmission that you're going to run in the car. In our case, we had a turbo 350 automatic, so the shift gate that came with it was all set up for that. But these are adjustable from the 2-speed power glide up to a 4-speed electronic overdrive. The other thing we had to do to the shifter to make it work properly was apply the supplied decal to the gauge on the shifter, which now has the proper markings for a turbo 350 instead of the original power glide. Another area we wanted to enhance the car was the instrumentation. We found some cool gauges. They're made by Stewart Warner Performance, and they're called the Green Line. They've got a retro-looking gauge, very similar to what these gauges had when they were new back in the 60s, but they've got all brand new movements inside. And the gauges that we chose are a temp gauge, voltmeter, and oil pressure. But part of the challenge was to not just mount them in a flat panel and hang them from the bottom of the dash. So we fabricated a steel housing to hold the gauges, and we thought while we're at it, we might as well include the AC vents from the vintage air unit and put them all in one steel box and design it to look like it was something that could have happened in the mid-60s. So once we made that steel enclosure, we finished it and bodyworked it with the intentions of mounting it under the dash by the console, and we'd have a unit that looks like it belongs instead of we just, screw to the bottom of the dash. One of the updates we decided to make was to add delay windshield wipers to the car. This is a new car feature that everybody takes for granted, but in an old car, when it starts to rain, you turn the wipers on and they're on, and you might have a couple speeds, but they're always on, so you find yourself turning them on, turning them off, turning them on, turning them off. So Detroit Speed and Engineering came up with a pretty trick idea. They take a wiper motor from a late model, I believe it's a 4th gen Camaro, 3rd or 4th gen Camaro, and they make an adapter plate to fit it in the 60s muscle cars. So we restored the wiper transmission mechanism and then installed the Detroit Speed wiper motor, which is going to add delay to the old car. And speaking of Detroit Speed and Engineering, we got another cool little part from them. It's a pre-bent hard line that will allow us to mate our Type 2 steering pump to the old style steering box. They sell a kit that has this stainless line that's bent to wrap around the reservoir on the pump, but the kit also comes with a pair of braided stainless hoses, I believe they're Teflon lined, that connect the steering pump to the steering box with a couple of AN adapters. Another nice feature we wanted to add was a tilt steering column. This one is manufactured by Ididit, and we got it through OPGI. This one came in bare steel. You can get them chrome plated, I think. We wanted to paint ours with the DuPont Hot Hues Hot Rod Satin Black to match the dashboard. And the install is pretty straightforward. You bolt it into the car, pass it through the firewall. We put a new firewall seal at the base of the column so that everything is sealed out as far as the elements. And the only thing that we had to do was trim the shaft that goes between the steering box and the steering column. So we put it together and measured it, checked it a couple times so we didn't cut it 3 times and have it still be too short. And once we got the piece cut, we installed it with a new rag joint, which is the flexible coupler on the end of the steering column, and then put the set screws together and tightened it all up and checked it and verified it and turned the wheel back and forth and made sure it all moved freely. And then the final lockdown, you have some little set screws and jam nuts that tighten up on the shaft, but it's also a good idea to use some Loctite on those so that you don't have any risk of things coming apart, because steering, obviously steering's important. Another element we like to add to these cars to make them more fun to drive is some sound deadening that also incorporates a heat shield. Now these cars, they're big, they're a body-on-frame construction, so they're really not that loud going down the road, but we added a big V8 and kind of a rumbly exhaust. So this time we tried a product called Hushmat, and we were very happy with it. Hushmat comes in a couple different varieties. One's got a black type surface, the other one is reflective, shiny like aluminum. And what the Hushmat does is it deadens the body panels so that they don't ring. You know, a big metal car, especially this one, a lot of the sheet metal is new. You know, you drop something on it, the panels resonate and they ring. Well, the Hushmat knocks that out, so it's got a much more solid feel and sound. And the other thing it does is it keeps heat out of the cabin. This car's got headers on it, it's got a big exhaust system, the engine's going to get hot, and by lining the firewall and the floor with the Hushmat, it's going to help to keep the heat out of the car. But it's also going to help keep the cool air in the car, because the next step was the addition of a Vintage Air AC system. Air conditioning used to be considered a luxury item. I think it's kind of almost mandatory on cars now, and especially because the systems have gotten so good. We work with a company called Vintage Air that does a really nice job of making AC systems that are designed to fit these old cars. Vintage Air makes a unit that's designed to fit the 65 Chevelle, and the guts of this thing fit nicely up under the dashboard, and it's all contained in one large fiberglass enclosure. So once you put the main box under the dash, you have to connect up the control cables. They've got a couple different systems. This one actually uses the original controller and cables to activate the unit to select if it's going to come out of the defroster vents or if it's going to come out of the dash vents. Once you get the main unit stuffed up underneath the dashboard, there's a few connections for hoses that connect back to the compressor, which is mounted on our front runner system on the front of the engine. And then you have to install the coil on the radiator core support and the receiver dryer. But all the hard lines are pre-bent to fit. You'll end up cutting and crimping the ends on the hose ends, but it's not that hard of a deal. And then finally, you install the dash vents. We put some dash vents in the corners at the bottom of the dash and then into our custom box that we made. We got a brand new reproduction gauge surround for the main dash gauge from OPGI. The plating on it is nearly perfect.
This is our dash from the 65 Chevelle. We didn't really want the clock in the center, so we went to OPGI and got a brand new tack, which, simple install. There's a bolt there and a bolt there that attaches to the back of the dash. And then there's just two bolts holding the clock in. If you would like to clean up your gauge face, the plastic and all that, it's just 4 little bolts. This piece comes out, the glass, there's tabs here along the top. All you got to do is take a flathead screwdriver and pry them up. This plastic piece comes off, and you can re-black out this back piece, and you can use some 3M rubbing compound. Works great with just a little towel, rubbing the plastic number 1 first and then going over number 2 to take off the finer scratches. And then the new tack just slips right in. There's guide pins in here, so you can't really mess it up.
The gauges look great inside. We cleaned them all up and reassembled it all. So the things that the driver comes in contact with most often are nice and shiny and bright, and they feel good. A good feeling steering wheel, a tilt wheel, so it'll be a nice car to drive.